So this is a quick video on how to install Polylok lids and risers on a FujiClean aerobic treatment unit. So we've got our lids and risers here, and these are all of the parts that we're going to use. So to hold the risers down, we use these deck screws. They're treated deck screws, and the ones we use, they're ACQ rated, which is for a corrosive environment. We find they work quite well and they don't seem to rot in the treatment tank. You can also use stainless. If you can get long stainless screws, that's probably a better option, but these are available locally and they work well, so this is what we use. We don't use them in the lids. We go back to the supplied Polylok stainless Robertson head screws for the lids, but we use the deck screws for the risers. So you need a utility knife, and we like the big ones, big wide blade. Don't like the little small weak ones. They tend to snap off when you cut these lids off. Got our cordless drill with our Robertson bit. And for adhesive, we like to use construction adhesive that is rated for concrete block. And there's quite a few options here. You can maybe find something that works for you. We like this because it's suitable for a wet environment, and we find it stays flexible and doesn't crack and dry and shrink, which could potentially cause leaking. So this one has worked really well for us, but use your own judgment on what you use for an adhesive. There's no specific adhesive that I know of for installing a Polylok lid on a FujiClean tank. So that's everything. I've got some gloves here for later on when we need to clean up the adhesive. So now we're going to go up there and I'll show you how to put these things on.
Okay, I'm going to pause, record.
So when you're ready, what I do is I usually cut all three of the travel lids off at the same time. There's a little groove where the travel lid needs to be cut, and if you look closely, it's kind of a 45. So I get my utility knife and I put it in there at a 45-degree angle. You work it in, and you notice I'm pushing away from myself. And this works really well if you get the angle just right. It just slides around like a utility knife through butter, especially on a warm day. That one's off. On to the next one. Third one. Oops. So now that that's done, take your adhesive, and I don't mess around with a thin bead. What I find is that 2 of these tubes will do CE5s, 7s, and 10s. If you do a 5, you've got about a third of a tube left. With the bigger tank, the larger 24-inch lids, uses more of it. I usually just use a screw to, I don't want getting this stuff all over the tool. Open that up. And it goes on the outer ring here, and I'm going to do all 3 at once. And you notice I'm just filling the channel completely, pretty much. I don't see any point in economizing because you're going to use 2 tubes anyway. one done. There's the first tube done. It's a good idea to leave the tube in the shop or in the cab of your truck if you're doing this in the winter, because it comes out a lot easier when it's warm.
Somebody's pogo sticking as we're videoing.
There. Okay, that's the 3 risers glued, and I do have some left in there. I guess you could use it all up if you wanted. So I put all the rings on.
Do you have a lid with you right now?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm just turning them and pushing them down into the adhesive to make sure that they're fully seated, because if they're not, the lids warp a little bit, and then, or sorry, the riser warps, and then the lid doesn't really fit properly. And at this point, I like to put a lid on each one, and I line the handles up so you can turn them a bit until all the handles line up down the, or 90 degrees or whatever your preference is. I think it looks a little bit better if they all line up. That's done. Now we just have to screw them down. So when you put these screws in, they're 2.5 inches long. If you could find a 2 1/4 inch corrosion-proof screw, that would be better, because these poke out a little bit. But we haven't been able to find one, not easily anyway. So we use these. And if you're careful when you install them, most of the excess goes into the tank, but there's always a couple that wind up protruding through on the outside. And it's not somewhere you'd normally put your hands, but if it's an issue, it might be a good idea to use a cutoff wheel on your drill and just cut them off. So when I screw them in, I kind of hold them against the riser a bit, which will sort of angle it so that it has a better chance of going down into the tank rather than outside. Oops. And then screw them in a kind of a alternating pattern. One done. side. Right, so that's the riser's on. Only thing left to do really is to clean the adhesive up a little bit. We put a glove on for that. This step is optional, I guess. And that's kind of it. Lid's on. Where to put them here? So when we're done, when we deliver these to a customer, we only put 2 screws per lid, because when you install, they inevitably get packed with mud, and you round these screw heads out. So we put 2 in each one to hold them down, and then we give them the rest separately, so that the contractor can install the rest of the screws once he's done with fresh screws that aren't damaged by the install. And that's it.
Done. Good work. 13 minutes.